Operators face increasing cyber risks, skill shortages, shrinking operational teams, and long investment cycles that collide with fast-changing technology.
This is Powering the Future, a podcast series brought to you by Smart Grid Forums. One planet, one power grid.
I'm Mandana White, and today I'm joined by Paul Cullen from Garderos. It's a company building rugged, cyber-secure connectivity for critical infrastructure. We'll find out more about it. Hello, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Mandana. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be with you here.
Fantastic. So, Paul, before we get started on the conversation, it would be great just to get a quick insight into your background at Garderos and what your role and responsibilities are at the moment.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mandana. I'm one of the co-founders of Garderos. The company was founded in the year 2002. And my role here is I'm responsible for international and utility sales, which is mainly electricity, DNOs, but also water and gas network operators. And my job really is to try and understand what are the customers looking for, what is the market looking for, and try and make sure that we meet that demand with the products and solutions which we're offering to these operators.
Right. Okay, great. Now, Paul, Garderos is pretty well known for a very interesting product area, zero-touch provisioning. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's driving the market for this in the power sector right now?
Really, what's driving zero-touch provisioning is that operators have increasing operational pressure. They're facing cyber risks. They're facing skill shortages, smaller teams. They have longer investment cycles. So really what they need is a low effort solution when they send a new system to site, let's say to a remote substation, that really it just needs to be plugged in, connect the antenna, power on, wait for a few minutes, and this system should be contacting a central provisioning server and configuring itself, which we call zero-touch provisioning. So really it's all driven by skills shortages, manpower shortages, and the need to have a consistently configured router fleet, not to have people on site making configurations or changes.
I imagine that there are many other players in the market that provide a similar solution. Can you tell us about how Garderos stands out in this sector? What some of your unique selling points are?
What our customers have told us essentially is that our solution is very simple. So we're based on open interfaces like HTTPS and SQL. Our software is based on open source software, so it's very powerful, very simple, but very secure. And the customers like the fact that the licensing for our zero-touch provisioning server is included in the yearly support fees, so there's no upfront license cost for the server. And above all, they just think it's quite simple to set up, to manage, to get running, to set up in a redundant configuration. So all in all, a very simple but secure system to use. What we've learned from working with our customers is that their router fleet is growing constantly, so from thousands to tens of thousands of routers. And what the customer wants is, above all, a consistent configuration. That's why everybody is moving away from on-site configuration. In the past, you were sending commissioning engineers to a site and they'd commission a system, and that's not going to happen in future. It's all going to be based on zero-touch provisioning. And of course, you need some processes in place to achieve that. But once you've got those processes in place, it means that the result you're going to have is a consistency. So you'll have a consistent configuration across your router fleet. So there's absolutely no doubt which configuration a router has. There's absolutely no doubt which firmware a router has. Right. So if we talk about a basic kind of hygiene or consistency, zero-touch provisioning is going to give you that basic hygiene in your router fleet. What we found out is that we monitor common vulnerabilities and exposures, CVEs, on a daily basis. And what we found out is some of these vulnerabilities are non-critical and some of the vulnerabilities are critical. So let's say you have a critical vulnerability. So it's well known. It's a bit like the airline industry. There's an airline crash and they say, why did the airplane crash? the airlines take notice, the manufacturers, they share all the information. And that's what everybody's trying to get in the cyber industry as well. So we'll share the information with our customers. Hey, there's a critical problem here. We won't try and hide it because it's, as I mentioned before, open source software. Let's say there's a critical risk. We recommend that you take this security update, which we just developed, and that you apply that to your router fleet. And this gets back to the problem. Let's say you've got 50,000 routers. I think everybody understands that you have to have this zero-touch provisioning. You want the routers to be calling home every 24 hours and saying, is there a new firmware image? Is there a new security update? So by having this zero-touch provisioning, it really helps you manage cyber risks. If you need to load a new security update within 24 hours on your entire fleet, then zero-touch provisioning helps you to do that. So I think this is kind of turning into an industry best practice, and it will be very interesting to discuss that with your visitors at the event in Paris.
Right. Okay. What about your wider portfolio of products? I understand that you're also quite heavily involved with virtual RTUs and edge computing.
Yes, one of the things we've seen in the smart grid market is that as you digitalize more and more substations, you could end up having tens of thousands or even more of secondary substations, which is the main market we look at. And electricity operators they have fixed budgets, they're facing cost pressures. So we've seen one market driver, which is the need for edge computing, which means, are there certain applications which I could run directly on a router? So we are a router manufacturer. Does the router have enough computing resources? Could I run other edge computing applications on the router? Which means if I can do that, it means I save an extra box on site, which can save cost and footprint, electrical power consumption, cabinet size, and so on. And one of these edge computing applications is the virtual RTU. Mm-hmm. And the virtual RTU essentially is let's like a protocol converter. So we can read, let's say, signals at the remote location. Things like Modbus RTU, Modbus TCP. We can convert those signals into SCADA protocols or MQTT messages and send them to the control center of the DNO. And this means that instead of having an extra physical RTU there, they now have a piece of software running on the router, which is performing the same function. So that can have a huge cost impact. If you multiply by, let's say, 50,000 locations, then you can imagine how big the cost saving could be.
Right. Okay. What do you think is on the horizon for utilities in this area? What are they demanding, and how are you serving them in the longer term?
I mean, one of the new things we're seeing in the market, which I'm sure will be discussed at your event in Paris, is flexibility. Mm-hmm. So if you think about this virtual RTU application I just mentioned, this is all about reading information at the local site, transmitting it to SCADA or transmitting it to the private cloud of the DNO. Mm-hmm. But if you want to start regulating distributed energy resources, let's say like a solar power inverter. So some countries have the problem, it's a nice problem to have, that you have a sunny day and you simply have too much power being fed into the grid. In that case, the DNO wants to reduce the amount of power being fed in, which means that which leads to this whole flexibility market, which I'm sure will be a big topic at your event. And using, let's say, an adapted version of the virtual RTU, we can give DNOs the possibility to be able to control distributed energy resources and to go down from 100% to 80% to 60%. So I think flexibility is one of the applications which we're going to be seeing more and more in the future.
Right. Okay. Now I know that underlying all of this is open source. You're a big fan of open source, and I think this is really gaining momentum in the industry as well. Can you describe for us some of the opportunities and the challenges that you see with open source and how Garderos is positioning itself in this area?
Well, it's quite interesting because if you look at some public tenders, big public tenders which come out, they actually mandate the use of open source. So some operators are saying, well, we want companies like Garderos to use open source. And the advantages for the customers and the advantages for Garderos are, if we take an open source package, let's say for VPN software, Strong Swan is a good example, then we automatically have a community of hundreds of software developers which are working on that package. Then you take another package for, let's say, secure shell access. You want to get secure access to a remote site. You have a package called Dropbear, which is very well known. Again, dozens or hundreds of developers working on that. And the best example is OpenSSL, which everybody is using, let's say, for HTTPS or for TLS computing. So you imagine that if you have to develop all that software yourself, it's like reinventing the wheel. So at the end of the day, the advantage for us is we can use an open source package, which is worked on by hundreds of developers worldwide. The beauty of open source is not just that it's zero license fee, but that it's open, which means that the customer can actually check the source code by himself.
Yeah.
So it's not software which is developed behind closed doors. It's actually open for everybody to read and review. And that's one of the main advantages of open source software.
Traditionally, there's been concerns around the reliability and the security of the software. So how is that being managed?
Every piece of software could be vulnerable, independent of whether it's open source software or software developed behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. The difference is that if you have software developed behind closed doors, you cannot read the source code. You only get the binary code from the manufacturer. So with open source, if there is a vulnerability, and there are vulnerabilities, no software is perfect, it will become known and publicly known. Everybody knows about it. The customers know about it. The manufacturers know about it. So we check that daily. We check about new vulnerabilities. And our job here is to say, are we affected by this vulnerability? And how do we mitigate this? Is this a non-critical risk or is it a critical risk? And we have different ways of dealing with non-critical and critical risks. So to get back to your question, I would say no piece of software is invulnerable, if you like. All software will have some vulnerabilities, but we're not relying on security by obscurity. We're not relying on software developed behind closed doors. We're relying on software developed in an open source community, so it's open for everybody to see.
Right. Okay, great. Well, it sounds really interesting. So, Paul, we're looking forward to seeing you at SGT26 in Paris this year in the capacity of exhibitor. So you joined us, I think, for the first time last year as an attendee. And this year you'll also be displaying your solutions and attracting interest to your organization and sharing your expertise. What are you hoping to take away from the event this year?
We're hoping to take away having conversations with the customers. So it's a great opportunity to meet. It's one of the top smart grid events in Europe, which is why we decided to exhibit. I was there as a visitor last year. And we're very keen on meeting DNOs, having conversations with them, saying, what are you looking for? What are your biggest problems? Which new applications do you need in the future? Because these guys think very, very far ahead. These are huge investment volumes and they cannot afford to take risks. Mm-hmm. So you need to be in on the ground. You need to know if they need something in 5 years, they'll be already thinking about it today. And of course, like any manufacturer, we need time to develop things. That's why I think the Smart Grid Forum is very important for us to have conversations with customers, try and find out what's really important to them, what will they be working on in the next couple of years, which hardware interfaces, which software interfaces do they need, and there's absolutely no alternative or no replacement for face-to-face meetings and face-to-face conversations.
Absolutely, absolutely. We look forward to seeing you in the team there. Thank you so much for your time today, Paul.
Thank you for inviting me and look forward to seeing you in Paris, Mandana.
Thank you. Join us again next time as we discuss another big topic shaping the future of the power grid. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Smart Grid Forums, and to follow us on LinkedIn. Until then, thanks for watching and listening.
This is Powering the Future, a podcast series brought to you by Smart Grid Forums. One planet, one power grid.